What's the truth? What is the truth behind the origins of the coronavirus? Dr. Fauci goes under the Senate's microscope, and China is getting nervous over renewed efforts to investigate their Wuhan lab. We're going to bring you the latest developments in a few minutes. President Biden's choice to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the ATF, well, he has some trouble defining the very thing that he wants to ban, which is assault weapons. We're going to talk with attorney and Victory News contributor John Graves a little later. Right now, let's start it off and go to Mike Garofalo with today's top stories. Mike?
Greg, the origin of the coronavirus continues to make news headlines. One of the big questions seems to be, what did infectious disease specialist Dr. Anthony Fauci know, and when did he know it? It appears the good doctor can't seem to keep his story straight. Now, you may recall this interaction.
Will you, in front of this group, categorically say that the COVID-19 could not have occurred through serial passage in a laboratory?
I do not have any accounting of what the Chinese may have done, and I'm fully in favor of any further investigation of what went on in China. However, I will repeat again, the NIH and NIAID categorically has not funded gain-of-function research to be conducted in the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
And it turns out the NIH did fund that particular Wuhan lab, according to reports. Dr. Fauci has since admitted to a collaboration as part of a subcontract of a grant with the Wuhan lab where the virus could have escaped. In fact, over $600,000 was donated with the direct knowledge of the NIH. Now, China on Thursday accused the Biden administration of playing politics and shirking its responsibility in calling for a renewed investigation into the origins of the coronavirus pandemic that was first detected in China in late 2019. A foreign ministry spokesperson said at a daily briefing that President Joe Biden's order showed the U.S. does not care about facts and truth, nor is it interested in serious scientific origin tracing. After months of minimizing that possibility as a fringe theory, the Biden administration is joining worldwide pressure on China to be more open about the outbreak, aiming to head off Republican complaints that the president has not been tough enough to press China on alleged obstruction. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who was a guest on Victory News yesterday, also took on SBA Administrator Isabella Guzman on Wednesday on Capitol Hill. Listen as the Republican pointedly seeks answers about COVID relief in the form of Paycheck Protection Program money going to Planned Parenthood affiliates.
Administrator Guzman, I've sent 2 letters to you signed by 50% of the committee members requesting specific information regarding PPP loans to Planned Parenthood affiliates. We have not gotten a response so far. How many first draw PPP loans have been approved to Planned Parenthood affiliates?
So specifically on specific borrowers, the SBA has not commented on specific borrowers.
Well, I'm asking you. I'm in charge of oversight over your trillion-dollar agency, and I'm asking you, how many have been approved?
Well, we don't publicly release that information. And one thing.
So you are in defiance of Congress. You will do what you want, not what Congress wants.
We have provided you a full listing.
You have not provided us with any listing of Planned Parenthood affiliates who've received money. This is an ongoing problem. The previous administration said it was unlawful. This is a big deal. The previous administration said it was unlawful and told them to return the money. Your administration is now giving them money. This is a legal question. This is a big deal. This isn't something you come to Congress and just say, I'm not going to answer the questions.
Also expected to appear alongside Guzman was Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. She was a no-show, and that did not sit well with both Republicans and Democrats alike. The Democrat and Republican leaders on the committee both took Yellen to task for refusing to testify. One of the reasons for that, Yellen played a big role in implementing the program. And committee chairwoman Nydia Velázquez, a Democrat, went as far as to say Yellen's refusal to testify was in violation of the law. Greg, back to you.
Wow. Mike, thank you very much. I want to bring in attorney, Victory News contributor John Graves. John, excuse me. John, the whole thing there with COVID, with Rand Paul and all of these, EcoHealth did funnel money to Wuhan labs. The money was given to EcoHealth. EcoHealth sent it. The Biden administration has canceled a State Department investigation that was ongoing from the previous administration. They did that this spring. 2017, I have it right here. Dr. Fauci said, no doubt Trump will face a surprise infectious disease outbreak. He said that at Georgetown University, on 9 days before the president was inaugurated. I have the list of all of the unclassified things right here. Your thoughts?
And it's worse than that, Greg. Well, you bring up two good points. One is it's worse than even what we just heard. Not only did they fund this man-made virus that happened in China, Fauci was the director when it happened and lied under oath in Congress saying he wasn't. That story that has been a conspiracy fringe minimized by the mainstream media is now getting more and more traction as more and more people fight for the truth. You have to fight for the truth for it to get it out. But the second thing you bring up is the COVID man-made virus promised by Fauci, funded partly by Fauci as the director, also was related to the election. He said it was going to happen with Trump. Trump is winning in a landslide until the COVID hits. He never recovers from all the fallout of COVID and everything that happens after that. And there's another fringe theory on that election about election integrity. And that now is doing the same thing, the China COVID exposure and Fauci exposure. More and more states are auditing. More and more evidence is mounting. And I predict both of those are going to continue to mount, and you're going to see the connection. Okay. So it's insightful that you point that out.
Really quickly. Well, we've been tracking this for months now. Real quickly, the money, the loan money from because of COVID, all of these trillions of dollars, all of a sudden we're finding out apparently went to Planned Parenthood to help them out. Yet they remained open when other things were locked down.
Exactly. They not only remained open, but they were one organization, and they gave money to all their affiliates, which was a violation of the PPP. And so that whole program was to help small businesses, and it was used by the government, used by them, and now they want to hide it. So watch the theme that happens here. We want to hide it. We want to minimize it as a conspiracy. Anytime somebody's minimizing something that looks suspicious as a conspiracy and trying to silence anybody who talks about it, you need to take note.
Yeah. Thank you so much, John. I'll bring you back in here in just a moment. Well, the Texas coastline sees an increase this time of year. People are going to the beach. However, earlier this week, something else was spotted on the shoreline, drugs, cocaine to be specific. The Matagorda Sheriff's Office says 110 pounds of cocaine washed up on the beach. Matagorda County is located on the Gulf of Mexico between Corpus Christi and Galveston. All right, our own Tim Fox is in Lansing, Michigan, in front of the state capitol, and he has a guest, Senator Pat Colbeck, with him. Tim?
Yeah, I do, Greg. You know, in that discussion that you just had with John Graves, John brought up election integrity, which is one of the big issues, obviously, that is still ongoing here in our country. And, of course, I have with me former state senator here in Michigan and friend of Victory News, Pat Colbeck. And, Pat, we've got all these audits going on around the country. Give our viewers an update on what's going on here in Michigan.
Well, in Antrim County, the judge dismissed the Antrim County lawsuit on the basis that he said an audit had already been conducted in Michigan. That wasn't the case by anybody who knows what an audit is. I mean, I've experienced an audit from the IRS perspective. That's not what was done up in Antrim County. So we're appealing, and we hope to get that moving again so we can get an audit in Michigan.
There are election integrity bills that are going through this building right here behind us. Yeah. Can you talk about those and how good are they?
Well, first of all, these bills, keep in mind, are being introduced by people that refuse to acknowledge that there's any election fraud in the election. So let's just ask the basic question, why are they pushing election reform legislation if there's nothing to fix? And it's reflected in my analysis of the bills. I mean, I went through letsfixstuff.org. I analyzed all the different legislation, and about 9 of these 49 bills are actually bad bills. They take us backwards, not forwards. I mean, they do things like early voting or early registration of voters that are just completely nonsensical. Yeah.
Talk about the fact that there's a groundswell. Early on, it was folks just like you and a few of us that were talking about this. There's a groundswell now here in this country. Talk about where do you think it's headed?
Well, it's headed into everybody wants to see this fixed. Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are saying it doesn't matter what's going on in 2022. I know a lot of people are running for office. This legislation that's coming through here, it's all because people want to have their name on a palm card when they hand it out for the campaign saying, I did everything I possibly could for election reform. And people aren't buying it. They want to fix what happened in the 2020 election. We want to be confident that when we cast a vote, it matters and it's going to be counted in the correct manner. And whoever wins, we want to make sure that the process is fair.
Your governor has been in the news quite a bit recently, and not for such good things. So you were telling me you read the 1856 Republican platform just the other day. Talk about, there's a plank in there that really would fit today, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. And one of the planks that they had in there was to hold people accountable for high crimes. And it was related to the election. They had election fraud going on where you may remember the Missouri Compromise. And it was about what was happening in Kansas. They wanted to make it some people wanted to make it a free state. The South wanted to make it a slavery state, and so during the elections they were feeding people that should not have been eligible to go off and vote. They were actually going off and casting votes, and they said, you know what, that's a high crime. And our Franklin Pierce, who was president at the time, was just turning a blind eye to it, and they said we need to hold them accountable.
Yeah. How would you describe your governor's handling of the pandemic and voter integrity as opposed to what's going on in states like Florida and Texas?
Well, it's the wrong policy. I mean, anybody who's actually, looking at this seriously and objectively understands that she's put all these arbitrary rules in here, which she doesn't feel compelled to actually follow herself, as we've seen in recent. Right. I mean, just down the road here, she was out at a bar out in Lansing, and she violated her own 6-person limit on restaurants. But it's about hypocrisy, and people are seeing through that, and that's why they're so upset about it. It's like one rule for them, another rule for everybody else, and that's how socialism works.
Yeah. People that are watching this program, some have gotten discouraged, some are staying the course. What would you say to people about staying the course?
You got to stay the course. I mean, the only reason we discovered as much election fraud as we did in this last election is because people came out and voted in overwhelming numbers, and that led to little anomalies that they couldn't hide behind the scenes, little pop-up vote tallies and negative vote tallies. You wouldn't have seen that if we didn't get out and vote. So please get out and vote. We got to go off and do it. In the meantime, I and a lot of other people are working our tails off to make sure that we have a good election system and that we hold people accountable for what happened in the 2020 election.
And I got to tell you, our viewers in this network appreciate what you're doing, and we appreciate your time this morning. Oh. Thank you for coming out and doing this morning.
Glad to see you in person, Tim, man.
Right. Awesome. Yeah, I look much better with makeup on, don't I, in person? Yeah. Well, Greg, what's going on here in Michigan and places like Arizona and other places, it's important things that are going on, and people like Pat Colbeck are very much in the middle of it. And so, Mike, I'll throw it to you for the rest of the news. Mike?
Tim, Joe Biden's pick to lead the ATF, David Chipman, is in need of some refreshing when it comes to the definition of an assault weapon.
5.6 in the military parlance should be defined as an assault weapon.
Let me clarify. What I believe I just said is any semi-automatic rifle.
Okay, any semi-automatic rifle.
What?
That's the definition. A detachable magazine that takes a 5.56 or 22 round should be defined as an assault weapon.
Senator, you asked me if ATF had used this term, and I was sharing with you my knowledge of a program in which ATF has defined this term. And it is in the Demand Letter 3 program, and that rifle is a semi-automatic rifle capable of accepting a detachable magazine with a round greater than a .22 caliber. And in those cases, firearms dealers on the southwest border are required to make a multiple sale report to ATF.
I'm amazed that might be the definition of assault weapon. That would basically cover every single modern sporting rifle in America today.
According to the NRA, there is no legal definition for the term assault rifle. The NRA uses the military definition of assault rifle, describing it as a selective fire rifle chambered for a cartridge of intermediate power. Well, as President Biden's administration continues its attacks on the fossil fuel industry, a group of 15 Republican state treasurers is fighting back. The treasurer sent a warning to banks who have been lobbied by the Biden administration to decarbonize and refuse to lend or invest in fossil fuel and the coal industry. The letter, led by West Virginia Treasurer Riley Moore, is directed at Special Presidential Envoy for Climate Change, John Kerry expresses concerns over reports that Kerry and other members of the Biden administration have been privately pressuring U.S. banks to stifle the fossil fuel industry. The signees of the letter represent collectively more than $600 billion in assets. Well, the Democrats' possible plan to pack the Supreme Court is back in the news. Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton has been a vocal critic. In a single-word tweet, Senator Cotton made it clear how he feels about the idea of packing the Supreme Court in retaliation if the court strikes a blow against Roe v. Wade. The tweet, which was linked to an article, just said, blackmail. The Supreme Court decided May 17th to hear Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization. The court will consider only question 1, which is whether all pre-viable prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. It is the first case dealing directly with the constitutionality of abortions since Republicans gained a 6-3 advantage among the justices. Well, if Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren gets her way, the IRS will almost triple in size, at least from a budgetary perspective. Warren introduced a bill this week to boost the IRS's budget from $12 billion to $31 billion. Senators Restoring the IRS Act of 2021 reportedly aims to stop wealthy tax cheats. It would also require financial institutions to disclose third-party account activity, and it would take a look at the IRS's operations with an eye on racial and income inequality. Greg, back to you.
Okay, Here we go. A bigger IRS, that can't be a good thing. No loans, no loans from banks for fossil fuels. Now, see, that could be drilling, but that could be you trying to get a loan for an automobile. Every gun above a .22 caliber is gone.
Every gun, actually.
Yeah.
If you fit the definition. Notice the theme in all those stories. It's about language. You've got a lady who doesn't even have 1/1000th of American Indian, who claims she's American Indian, wanting to triple the size of the IRS and look at racial disparities, claiming she's something she's not. They want to apply the rules for them when it works for them. The radical left socialists are trying to take over. And what do they want to do? Look at the story Tim just covered with Pat Colbeck. They want to make it a fringe story, they want to silence the story, or they want to pretend like they're doing an audit, pretend like an audit was done, pretend like someone looked into this. Now just move on now. And if not, the most damaging story we just heard is blackmail. If you don't do what we want you to do on abortion, we'll just pack the court. That's the threat of the left. And so every one of those stories are the same thing. The radical leftist socialists are trying to take over the country. We have to stay the course, like Pat said.
The vast majority of Americans don't like this. And what the Republican Party, I've been trying to think, what is the answer for the Republican Party to turn this thing around? And it's language. You just had it. You just said it just a second ago. And the Republicans love to talk about taxes, 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 stopping taxes, lowering taxes. Quit talking about taxes. Talk about children. I think that's the thing. Yeah. Regardless of where you're at in America, children is the thing. Use their language. Call the Democrats segregationists. That's what they are. Call them racist.
Yeah,
that's what they are.
And they're racist. It's just a new form of racism that now fits their narrative and keeps the victim mindset on a whole class of people that they want to control, use, and do things that damage that class of people. And so the entire thing you said is exactly right. We need to change language. We need to talk about children, but we need to talk about freedom. We need to talk about liberty. And I would say we need to get rid of some people in both parties that are not consistent with what the American people, and this is the biggest thing I would say to our audience, don't give up.
No.
So many people have given up. They get discouraged. That's what the left wants. You have to stay the course. It's a Christian discipline.
Those new contract. A new contract of America. That's what I'm calling for. Mike, back to you.
Yeah.
Greg, with the Memorial Day weekend upon us and many state mask restrictions being lifted, especially for those who have been vaccinated, a travel boom is expected. In fact, this could be the biggest travel weekend since the pandemic began. AAA is predicting a 60% increase in the number of people traveling over last year. On Sunday, reports indicate nearly 2 million people traveled through the nation's airports. That's the most since the lockdown began. One thing to remember, if you are traveling by air, pack your patience. The FAA says incidents of air rage are being reported more commonly. 2,500 cases have been reported already this year. One of the most recent took place Sunday. That's when a Southwest Airlines flight attendant is said to have lost 2 teeth during an assault. Well, if you enjoy hitting the high seas, listen up. The CDC approved test cruises that will begin next month out of Miami. Royal Caribbean's Freedom of the Seas ship is scheduled to take to the water in late June. Starting on June 20th, the first test cruise will take place with about 1,000 volunteers. It aims to review all COVID-19 safety protocols. Also part of the test phase, different coronavirus testing measures, and of course, social distancing and mask usage will also be looked at. Royal Caribbean is now, listen to this, looking for volunteers to assist with that testing phase. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos says he is stepping out, effective and stepping down July 5th. The date marks the 27th anniversary of the company's incorporation, going back to 1994. Andy Jassy will take Bezos' place. Jassy is currently the chief of Amazon Web Services. Jeff Bezos says he will transition to executive chairman of Amazon's board while also focusing on Bezos' Earth Fund, his spaceship company, Blue Origin, I'm not positive which one, and the Washington Post, as well as the Amazon Day One Fund. In addition, Amazon just this week announced it had purchased film studio MGM for a cool $8.45 billion. Greg, back to you.
All right, I want to bring John Graves back in here. John, let's tie a bow on this whole thing. It's people now, the majority of the people doing the right thing.
It is, and it's also not just doing the right thing, but staying the course when it looks the darkest. Staying the course. In the scripture, we forget that the saints that endure to the end, that persevere to the end, is part of the mark of believers. And so, as Christians, if it looks bad that the news is taken over, if it looks like socialism is taken over, if it looks like the left is taken over, our job is to stay. If all you know to do is pray, pray. If you can support people who are doing the right thing, you can continue to vote even if you believe there was a lot of fraud. You have to do your part and trust that God, in time, will bring these things out. And we have to stay engaged in that.
Absolutely true. John Graves, thank you so much for being with us. The insight that you bring to this network is appreciated.